All right, friends. So we already did, there we go. We already did lesson one, part one. There we go. Now we're doing lesson one, part two. So lesson one, part one, you learned how to simplify fractions. Now lesson one, part two, you're going to learn how to subtract fractions with the same denominator, and then you're going to simplify. Okay. So again, you always have to give a simplified answer on an exam or quiz. Okay. So in subtracting fractions, the rule is this is just the rule in general for subtracting fractions. So you will not always have a common denominator. Not in this lesson. In the next, I think it's the next lesson, we'll teach you how to create a common denominator, or it might be in a future lesson, I'll teach you how to create a common denominator. I think the next lesson I'm teaching you how to add fractions. But you will not always have a common denominator. So these are just the steps on how to subtract fractions. So step one is to make sure you always have that common denominator. You cannot subtract, you can't add or subtract fractions unless they have a common denominator, which means they have to have the same number on the bottom. Top number is your numerator, bottom number is your denominator. You have to have the same number on your bottom to add or subtract a fraction. That's your first step to make sure you have that common denominator. Second step, once you have a common denominator, you subtract your top numbers, your numerators. Okay. Third step, simplify. You simplify your fraction. All right. So step one, make sure you have common denominators. Check. They're both over 4. So now we know we can subtract these fractions. We're allowed to subtract them. So it says second step, subtract the top numbers. So now I'm just looking at my top numbers and I'm saying I'm saying 3 minus 1 is 2. Okay. You keep your denominator. Your denominator stays the same. So it's going to be 2 over 4. Okay, so you keep the denominator stays the same. Step 3 says you simplify. Can I simplify this fraction? Absolutely, because again, they're both even numbers. If they're both even numbers, you know for sure you can divide by 2. So 2 goes into 2 one time, and 2 goes into 4 two times. All right, so your final answer. So that's basically just saying that 2/4 is equivalent to 1/2. Okay, they're equivalent fractions. They're the same thing. If I pick up my calculator, once again, you would see, I'll use the calculator that you guys use in class. Well, this calculator won't show it the same way as a graphing calculator. It won't show you back to back like mine does. So 2 divided by 4 equals 0.5. Okay, and 1 divided by 2. So it shows you, so again, it shows you their equivalent fractions. They're just shown in different forms. So it's the same thing. They equal the same thing. I didn't change the value of the fractions at all. Okay. They're just ones in a more simplified form. All right. So we'll just try a couple more. So I have 5/6 minus 1/6. Step one, again, is to make sure that you have a common denominator. We do, they're both over 6. Step two, you subtract your numerators. So you're doing 5 minus 1. 5 minus 1 is right here, equals 4. So now you have 4 over 6. Again, you know you can simplify that because they're both even numbers. So they're both divisible by 2. 2 goes into 4 twice, 2 goes into 6 3 times. Since they're both prime numbers, you know that's it, you're done. There's nothing else you can do with that. That's your final answer. All right. So now we have 24 over 28 minus 17 over 28. So again, first step is we check and make sure they have a common denominator. They both do. They're both over 28. And then you do 24 minus 17, and that equals 7. Okay. And then you ask yourself, is that in most simplified form? No. So if you know your 7 times tables, you would know that 7 goes into 28. So I am going to say 7 goes into 7 one time, 7 goes into 28 4 times. Okay. Again, if you don't know your multiplication tables by heart, you would just use your calculator and divide. Okay. So just you would use your calculator and just see if 7 goes into 28. That would be what I would do. So just divide it out and just check. All right. So that would be the most simplified form. And that's your answer. So now just take some time, do the practice, your independent practice, and I'll see you in a little bit. Bye now.